All right, hello and welcome. Today we're going to dive into one of the most powerful and honestly one of the coolest features in the entire database world, SQL Triggers. You can think of them as this secret automated workforce that you build right into your database to make the whole thing just come alive.
So, let me just start by asking you this. What if your database wasn't just some passive box you stuff data into? What if it was an active participant in what's going on? What if it could enforce its own rules? Clean up after itself, and even guard its own doors? Well, guess what? It can. And that is exactly what triggers are all about.
So here's the game plan. We're going to take a little tour of this dynamic data organization. First, we'll meet the automated workforce itself. Then, we'll check in with the teams that are guarding the data, protecting the overall structure and monitoring the doors. And then, we'll see how you can become the conductor of your very own database orchestra.
Okay, let's kick things off with the big idea here. Stop thinking of your database as just a static warehouse. I want you to start seeing it as a bustling organization. And SQL Triggers? They're the silent, tireless operators working behind the scenes, reacting to things the moment they happen.
So what is a trigger, really, when you boil it all down? Well, it's a special kind of procedure that you never call directly. Nope. Instead, it automatically runs, or fires, whenever a specific event happens. And that event could be anything, really. Someone inserting new data, someone changing the database structure, or even just someone logging in.
Let's meet our first team. These are the DML triggers. DML stands for Data Manipulation Language. Just think of them as the guardians on the front lines. They're the ones managing the day-to-day stuff with your actual data. The inserts, the updates, and the deletes.
Now, inside this team, we've got a few different specialists. And first up is a group I like to call the cleanup crew. Their whole job is to take care of things after the main event is already over and done with.
And this is where the analogy really clicks, right? Think about it. A cleanup crew comes in after the conference is over to tidy everything up, while an after trigger does the exact same thing. It fires after an insert or an update or a delete has already finished and it's all been successful. This is absolutely perfect for stuff like creating an audit log or maybe sending out a notification because you know for a fact the main job is already done.
And here's what their work order looks like. This bit of code is basically telling the database, hey, on this table, right here, after someone inserts a new row, I need you to run these cleanup actions. It's a super clear, super direct instruction for your automated crew. Next up, we have a totally different kind of operator, the decision-making authority. This isn't about cleaning up afterwards. Oh no. This is about stepping in and taking control of the whole situation right from the get-go. So the key word here is instead. It's crucial. Imagine you call a company, but instead of putting you on hold and transferring you, the receptionist just handles your request right then and there. That is an instead of trigger. It intercepts an action, like an insert, and basically says, hold on, don't do that. Do this special action I've prepared for you instead. This is incredibly powerful, especially for things like handling complex updates on views.
And the code makes it so obvious, doesn't it? It literally says instead of insert. You are paving a completely different road for the database to follow, which gives you total control over what happens next. It's awesome.
Okay, quick pause. Before we meet the next team, we got to get one thing straight. So far, we've been talking about DML triggers, which handle the data, right? The actual contents of your filing cabinet. Now we're going to shift gears and talk about DDL triggers, which handle the structure, the design of the filing cabinet itself.
Big difference.
And that difference brings us to our second big group, the architects. Their job has nothing to do with the individual files. Instead, they're here to protect the entire blueprint of your database. So these are your DDL triggers. You can think of them as the custodians of your database's whole schema. They make sure that any changes to the structure are intentional, that they're authorized, and that they don't accidentally mess up the integrity of the whole design.
I mean, think about it, right? An architect wouldn't just let a construction crew randomly start knocking down walls. It's the same idea here. A DDL trigger is always watching for commands like create table, alter table, or, and this is a big one, drop table. It can step in to stop accidents from happening or just to log who is trying to change the database structure. And notice the difference in this work order. It says on database. See, unlike our data guardians who usually work on just one table, these architects have jurisdiction over the entire database, sometimes even the whole server. They're watching over the entire blueprint. So we've protected our data, we've protected our structure, but what about the front door? Well, that brings us to our final team, the gatekeepers, the ones who monitor who's even allowed into the database in the first place.
And this is the job of the login trigger. It's basically the security guard at the main entrance, checking IDs, and keeping an eye on who is coming and going from your entire database environment. Just like a security guard at a high-security building watches every single person who comes in, a logon trigger fires the very moment a user successfully connects. This is your first line of defense, your first point of observation. You can use it to audit every login or even enforce rules like, hey, this user can only log in between 9 and 5. And just look at the scope here on all server. This isn't for one database. This gatekeeper is standing at the front door of your entire server, giving you this incredibly powerful, centralized spot for all your security and monitoring. So we've met the individual teams, right? The data guardians, the architects, and the gatekeepers. Now, let's bring it all together and see how they work in concert, like a perfectly tuned orchestra, with you as the conductor. Okay, so let's pull this all together. This little chart is a perfect summary of our team. You've got your cleanup crew, that's the after trigger, right? They work post-event. Then there's the decision maker, your instead of trigger, which just steps in and replaces the event. The architect is the DDL trigger, watching over the whole blueprint. And finally, the gatekeeper. That's your logon trigger, watching who comes and goes. See, each one has a super clear, super important job. So, why does any of this matter? Why should you learn this stuff? Because with these tools, you can build systems that are truly resilient. You can enforce complex business rules to make sure your data is always clean. You can automate critical security checks right at the front door. And you can create these incredibly powerful and detailed audit trails for compliance or just for troubleshooting. You're not just storing data anymore. You're building an intelligent, self-regulating system. So we've seen how every trigger plays its part, and they can all work together in harmony to protect, manage, and monitor your data, all automatically. The power really is now in your hands. So the only question left is this. Now that you're the conductor, what are you going to make your data orchestra play?